The film begins with a little boy named Steve, who takes us into the fun world of Minecraft. We're talking about the overworld, the main land full of untold exciting stories. As a child, Steve dreamed of becoming the world's best miner because he loved exploring new places, building things, and crafting new items. But whenever he tried to enter the nearby mine, a grumpy old man would stop him. There was a strict rule. Children weren't allowed, only adults. Time passed and Steve grew up. But life wasn't what he had imagined. He ended up working a boring job selling door handles. Every day felt the same, and slowly he felt like his life was going nowhere. Then one day, while eating alone, he remembered his childhood dream. With a newfound determination, he decided to return to the mine, and this time, no one could stop him. And indeed, he reached it. The old man was still there, but Steve didn't care. He began digging like crazy, as if trying to reclaim lost time. Suddenly, he found two strange objects, a crystal cube and a creation cube. When he combined them, a magical explosion opened the door to a new world, the overworld, a world where anything was possible. There, he tamed pink sheep, built 3 amazing houses, and became the architect of his dreams. During his journey, Steve met a wild wolf who initially tried to attack him. But with a juicy femur bone, Steve tamed him and named him Danish. They became best friends. Together, they created amazing things, shaped the world their way, and soon all animals began living peacefully with them. Time passed. They kept exploring, building, and discovering new things. Then one day, Steve stumbled upon ancient ruins and found a chest containing a mysterious new portal. This portal led to the Nether, a twisted, dark world where creativity had no place. It was filled with ruthless, greedy, pig-like creatures, all serving a powerful witch named Malgosia. Malgosia had a tragic past. As a child, she wanted to be a dancer, but people mocked her. Even her father kicked her out. Hurt and humiliated, she turned to hate. She now wanted the creation cube to rule all worlds. But clever and brave Steve escaped with the cube and gave it to Danish with a mission: hide it somewhere on Earth where no one could find it. Danish succeeded. He traveled across the world and hid the most powerful artifact beneath Steve's waterbed. As long as it remained there, the overworld was safe. Years later, we meet Garrett Garrison, a young guy who changed the world of video games. He became the star of a hit arcade game thanks to his amazing trash-throwing skills, so precise that he earned the nickname Trashman. He got $1 million deal. He had everything. But one day, he received an eviction notice. His luck ran out, and he fell from the top to rock bottom. Now broke and desperate, Garrett went to a local auction hoping to find something valuable to sell. A staff member told him about an old artifact that was supposedly priceless. Curious, Garrett asked to see it more closely. The auction began, and after a brief bidding war, he bought the mysterious box for $900, promising to pay the rest in 6 months. But when he opened the box, it was completely empty. Furious, he felt scammed and slammed the lid shut. He didn't realize the creation cube was right there, hidden in plain sight. Blinded by disappointment, he didn't even notice the man nearby who overheard his complaints. The stranger suggested maybe it was time Garrett stopped chasing treasures in shady auctions. Meanwhile, we meet Henry and his older sister Natalie. After losing their mother, they move to a new city. Natalie, trying to rebuild her life, takes a small job to help pay the rent. They're welcomed by a friendly real estate agent named Doe, who greets them with warmth and kindness. The next morning, Natalie makes Henry breakfast, a pizza to share with new friends at school, and gives him a bottle of cologne, just to show love. But Henry, still struggling with grief and change, barely thanks her and heads out for his first day. Back at Garrett's shop, he's cleaning out old junk when Henry arrives. The curious boy offers him a claw piece in exchange for advice. Garrett, who calls himself the salesman of the game of life, jokingly says his advice costs $50 an hour. Still, he shares some real wisdom. Friends are like puzzles. Sometimes you have all the pieces, and sometimes you're missing just one to feel whole. You can't be a team alone, but with just one other person, you can overcome anything. Inspired, Henry heads to class. At school, he meets the principal, who gives him a name tag. During their talk, the principal casually reveals that his marriage ended years ago, but he and his wife still live together, just for the love of their dogs. Later, Henry enters the classroom, where a very sarcastic teacher complains about hating his life. Class begins, and the students are assigned a group project. Henry accidentally placed a part incorrectly, and suddenly the jetpack prototype went out of control. At the same time, Natalie, who was working nearby, was startled when the out-of-control gadget crashed onto her building. The principal panicked and demanded to speak with Henry's guardian. Nervously, Henry called Garrett and begged him to pretend to be his uncle. As soon as Garrett heard that Henry had $26 in cash, he immediately agreed. Trying to explain the situation to the principal, Henry asked Garrett about the strange cube he had seen behind his shop. Garrett just shrugged and said he was selling it for $95. He had no idea what the cube actually did. But after rummaging around, they found an old instruction manual. In bold letters, the manual warned, "Under no circumstances should the orb and the crystal cube be joined together." It also said, "Never open it just because you're broke, hoping there's treasure inside." Being curious and completely ignoring the warning, they decided to take a look. They went into an old abandoned mine to see if the cube had any power. Little did they know, they were about to embark on an adventure that would change their lives forever. Meanwhile, Natalie noticed Henry hadn't come home. Worried and with no other option, she called real estate agent Don. Using a tracking app, Don located Henry. He was in an abandoned mine. Without wasting a second, they rushed to find him. When they arrived, they saw something wild and dangerous. The mysterious cube was glowing, emitting a strange energy that was pulling Henry toward it. Without thinking twice, everyone grabbed Henry, but one by one, they all got sucked into a vortex and crossed through a portal, landing straight into the overworld. Surrounded by a new world, Garrett proudly declared himself a legendary gamer of 99. Soon after, they encountered the famous pink sheep, who stared at them with curiosity. But they weren't alone. A villain who had seen the portal open followed them to Earth, creating a wild connection between the two worlds. Meanwhile, in the Nether, the piglins were digging tirelessly, but hadn't found a single piece of gold. Malgosia was furious again. She threatened to punish them with a fate worse than death if they didn't find gold soon. She turned them into unpaid portal workers. Just then, she received a signal. The portal was active again. She immediately visited Steve, who was still her prisoner. Knowing he had stolen the orb, she freed him without much drama but gave him a strict condition. If he wanted to save his beloved wolf Dennis, he had to return what belonged to her. Back in the overworld, Garrett was desperately trying to impress Pink Sheep, asking for a gold hunting mission. Time passed with no results, until suddenly, Dennis the wolf came running and barking loudly. Pink Sheep stepped back, and silence fell over the area. But the silence didn't last. Creepy sounds echoed. Hunter skeletons, giant spiders, zombies, and creepers emerged from the shadows and launched a full-blown attack. Everyone ran to save themselves, but Henry stayed calm. Using his smarts, he began building walls from blocks to protect the others. Garrett froze, but a creeper exploded near him, dazing him. His scream gave away his location, and soon, the zombies cornered him. Amid the chaos, Pink Sheep was also captured. Just then, the rest of the group arrived to save Garrett. A fierce battle followed. And then, like a true hero, Steve arrived. Using his incredible skills, he took down all the enemies. Everyone was stunned. As the sun rose, the zombies started burning in the morning light. Steve revealed that he came for something else, the Dominion. He had made a deal. He would help them return to Earth, but in exchange, he would keep the orb. Without the crystal cube, returning safely was impossible. So they had to either retrieve the cube or find the only other way. Meanwhile, the villain who followed them through the portal was hit by the school principal's jeep. She had been driving distracted. Embarrassed and afraid of a lawsuit, she quickly tried to smooth things over, invited him to dinner, and joked, "Everyone's trying to manipulate me these days, but you seem smart." Back with the kids, the group reached a peaceful village with friendly and curious villagers. There, they met new characters, a legendary pig, a wise llama, and a giant iron golem who guarded the place with honor and strength. To rest and recover, they all shared a meal of roast chicken. Steve, always alert, warned that the chicken was cooked over lava and still very hot. But Garrett, proud of not showing weakness, ignored the warning, took a big bite, and quietly endured the pain to save face. Meanwhile, in the Nether, Malgosia lost it. Tired of constant failure, she summoned her most powerful general, Chungus. He was the strongest, and surprisingly the kindest piglin. She warned him about the unknown intruders, the roundies, as she called them. Before sending him off, she gave him a special talisman to prevent him from becoming zombie bait. She demanded no more carelessness. In the overworld, the group continued toward the legendary mansion. Along the way, they stumbled upon Steve's inventory, a magical space filled with tools, gadgets, and fun stuff. There, they found a special item, the Ender Pearl, which teleports you wherever you throw it. Being Garrett, he used it instantly, without realizing it was their last one. Later, Steve showed them how to craft tools from the world's resources. Inspired, Garrett made his own weapon, strange but functional. Meanwhile, Henry combined junk from the old world with Minecraft materials and, surprisingly, created something powerful. Garrett later pulled Steve aside and confessed that he had secretly read a note inside the orb and asked directly about the rumored treasure. Steve admitted there was a stash of diamonds, but it was deep in the mines, far from the mansion. Getting there was risky. But Garrett didn't flinch. Staring into Steve's eyes, he said, "No diamonds, no orb." And so, they headed to the mines. As they were about to extract the diamonds, the piglins arrived. General Chungus introduced himself to Steve, softly, but with an undertone that said, "I could destroy you in a blink." Steve tried to de-escalate, but Garrett, jealous and seeking attention, jumped in with his weird weapon and attacked Chungus. Not only did he fail miserably, but he accidentally hit Steve instead. Chungus wasn't even scratched. Chaos broke out. The group split. Natalie and Don were together, while Garrett and Henry ended up on their own. Before parting, they agreed to meet at the mansion. To help them escape, Steve crafted special flight wings, but only had 2 pairs. Suddenly, he grabbed Garrett and flew off. They soared together through walls, dodging sharp attacks, performing dazzling stunts, and trying to outrun the piglin army. At one point, they flew over a peaceful field where sleepy pandas lay snoozing, unaware. Finally, Garrett and Steve initiated water drop mode and landed in a lake, safe without a scratch. Back on Earth, the school principal was on a surprise date with the villager she had hit with her car. During dinner, she confessed she was divorced and said, "My ex-husband had no personality." Meanwhile, in the overworld, Steve revealed Malgosia's backstory. Long ago, she had dreamed of becoming a world-class dancer. Her moves were stylish and impressive, but the strict traditions of the Nether and her father's disapproval crushed her dreams. Disgraced, she turned her back on beauty and creativity forever. If Malgosia got the orb, she would destroy the overworld and all innocent life in it. But Steve faced a dilemma. He needed the orb to save his beloved wolf Dennis, still imprisoned by Malgosia in the Nether. Elsewhere, Natalie and real estate agent Don suddenly encountered Steve's legendary wolf. Recognizing him, Don cleverly gave Dennis a bone to earn his trust. Touched by the kindness, Dennis allowed them to approach. Knowing the wolf belonged to Steve, they decided to follow him, hoping he would lead them to the rest of the group. Underground, Garrett and Henry finally reached the deep area where the diamonds were hidden. But then, Steve, with his sharp miner's nose, sensed a familiar foul smell, clearly from the Nether. This could mean only one thing. The legendary piglin was near. Steve's anger resurfaced. He lashed out at Garrett for wasting time over diamonds. Garrett, tired and irritated, replied coldly, "I need those diamonds. It's the only way I won't stay broke. You wouldn't understand. You're just a kid." But Henry looked straight into his eyes and replied. Garrett went silent. Moved by Henry's words, something shifted inside him. A new bond formed. Together, they begin planning a heist at the mansion. According to Steve, the place has 3 floors. The first floor is guarded by the battle-trained villagers, strict, disciplined, and no nonsense. The second floor is occupied by the evokers, dark mages who can summon nightmares. The topmost floor holds the Enderman crystal, guarded by the Enderman himself, a killer who can destroy you with a single glance. Before they could even take a step, the villagers attacked and dragged them into an underground fight club. It was a brutal arena with no rules. Garrett was forcibly thrown into the ring to face a zombie rider, a deadly little kid mounted on a bloodthirsty chicken. It looked ridiculous, but the little guy fought like a demon. Meanwhile, Henry stealthily made his way to the 3rd floor. The hallway was dark and terrifying, and the Enderman was waiting for him. With no way out, Henry grabbed his diamond suit and launched an attack. The battle was intense, but with courage and skill, Henry won. As his reward, he took the teleportation sphere, a magical object that could instantly take him anywhere in the overworld, and perhaps even beyond. After escaping the mansion, exhausted but close to completing their mission, the group suddenly faced their worst nightmare: Malgosia. The Witch of Melting had tracked them down through a trail of magical fragrance. With a devilish smile, she seized the creation cube and the Enderman crystal. Without a fight, without a warning, just arrogance. Then she disappeared into the shadows, as if she had already won. Disheartened, Steve and Henry tried to flee, knowing it was impossible to retrieve the artifacts. But Garrett stood his ground. He had seen it all, and a fire of rebellion burned in his eyes. "If I have to lose," he said, "I'll lose in style." He raised his hands, shouted, and triggered a massive explosion. The blast waves scattered everyone. The boys were knocked out and barely conscious. Amidst the rubble, Dennis found Steve, shook him awake, and slowly Steve stood up. Far off, Henry was groaning in pain, but alive. Amid the destruction, they spotted a strange little structure, a cozy mushroom house, built quickly by Doe and Natalie as shelter. Reunited, the group realized how dire the situation had become. Darkness was spreading through the overworld, and Malgosia's power was consuming everything. For Garrett, for the world, and for everything they once stood for, they decided to fight back. They started crafting new, stronger tools. Henry, ever clever, used the teleportation sphere to design a new plan. He upgraded the iron golems, granting them super speed. Now they had an army of furious metal titans, ready to take on the minions of the Nether. Malgosia laughed when she saw them approach. Golems won't attack unless provoked. But a careless piglin charged in, and that was enough. The golems went berserk, and war broke out. Enraged, Malgosia unleashed her deadliest weapon, the Great Pig. But she didn't expect the hero's ultimate golem, bigger, stronger, and forged from a secret alloy. The two beasts clashed in a ferocious duel that shook the overworld. Meanwhile, Steve confronted Malgosia. Clad in handcrafted diamond armor, wielding a massive diamond plate, he looked like a legend. But Malgosia didn't flinch. She knew her dark magic surpassed any sword. Back on the battlefield, the fight surged toward Henry and the Dominion. Natalie was left alone. Just then, the Great Pig broke free from its duel and charged toward Natalie. She had nowhere to run. But before anything could happen, a voice echoed. Standing on a hill, surrounded by a pack of wild wolves she had somehow tamed and united. With a sharp whistle, she ordered the attack. The wolves lunged at the Great Pig. A savage primal battle began. In the chaos, the Great Pig, burning with rage, launched a deadly bomb toward Henry. It hit. Henry fell, and the battlefield fell silent. Everyone froze. Then, from the smoke and fire, Garrett rose like a phoenix. He sprinted, grabbed Henry, and dragged him to safety. With the last of their strength, the heroes reunited. They smashed Malgosia's dark machinery and hurled the Dominion's core into a deep chasm. Suddenly, light returned to the sky. The overworld breathed again. Balance was restored. But just as the Dominion fell, the Great Pig caught it. Hope seemed lost. Then the ultimate golem delivered one final, thunderous strike, destroying the beast and reclaiming the Dominion once and for all. Now, the final battle awaited. Steve approached Malgosia. She was weak, defeated, broken. He looked into her eyes and said, "It's over. You've lost." Still, she tried to trick him. 3 times she lunged with hidden lives, and 3 times Steve struck her down. Steve knew the war was over, but instead of ending her, he walked away. He let her live, with the shame of her defeat. After ending the threat, Steve said goodbye to the group. He turned to Henry and offered him a place in the overworld, a chance to start a new life. Henry smiled and shook his head. He knelt beside Dennis, handed the leash to Doe, and said, "I want peace, and you deserve it too." With a warm smile, Steve hugged Garrett, calling him a true friend and brave warrior. He thanked Natalie and Doe for their courage. One by one, he watched them leave through the portal. As he prepared to return to his peaceful life in the overworld, Steve paused. He looked around, thought for a moment, and with new resolve, stepped into the Earth portal. A few days later, everything had changed. Garrett had leveled up big time. His shop was a hit. He'd become the master of hustle and gaming. Together, the group had launched a new video game based on their wild adventure. Life couldn't be better. Doe left real estate and now lived for adventure. Wherever she went with Dennis, fun followed, just like her new catchphrase said. Natalie had opened her own self-defense school, now a local hero and a community star. And Henry? He finally perfected the jetpack. Now soaring through the skies, he was living his dream. And that's where the story ends. Or maybe not. Post-credit scene. It turns out, love bloomed between the villain and the school principal. Now he speaks fluent human, and she has learned the villagers' language. Ever since that wild night, one thing lingered in the villager's mind. He took her hand, got down on one knee, and asked the question. He proposed. And now the story truly ends.